Well, Michael Shure, we were remarking in the first hour at the remarkable disproportionate way in which the media covers these two candidates. The presidential candidates are one of them is this lawless guy, the other a former prosecutor and current vice president who is constantly queried on any number of policy issues. Whereas Trump is not queried particularly on policy issues, able to pivot to whatever, say whatever comes to mind, whatever it's literal lunacy really seems unmoored when it comes to trying to stay on track to any allegiance to facts. And more to the point, this week, and then, since you do join us weekly to kind of reflect on what revelations have and developments have occurred during the week, you have Mark Milley, who with in the war book that was done by
Bob
Woodward.
Woodward.
Yeah, thank you. And you also have the Atlantic article, which quotes Donald Trump's chief of staff, longest serving chief of staff, as saying that he is an autocrat in waiting. He wanted to turn the military out on the streets of Washington and in the streets of America when he was president, and he sees him as a fascist. I'm wondering if you can explain to me or in some way contextualize the way in which the media sort of blows by this, or maybe the media is covering it, but it doesn't seem to stick to this candidate.
I think it's more of the latter, right? I think there's something about this man. They used to call Ronald Reagan Teflon, but this is because nothing would stick to him. This takes it to an entirely new level, and it's unprecedented. And the real, I mean, Dan Quayle ran for vice president, and he misspelled potato, and there was a question of whether or not he was able to stay on the ticket, because how could somebody who misspelled potato in a classroom be smart enough to be vice president? And we're talking about now somebody who has done all the things that Donald Trump has done, both extrajudicially or using his power in a way that has never been used before, and threatening to use it, as John Kelly said. So I don't know the answer to that. When the book is written, I will look forward to reading that book unquestionably, because I think it is a compelling argument about how our country has veered in this direction where these things don't matter at all.
This is a really great thing, the last thing you just said, which is speaking to the way in which the country is so transfixed by the shiny object that Donald Trump is, the show that Donald Trump is. And you've spoken, because you've attended so many of these Trump rallies, and you've spoken before about how you were noticing that people weren't really there for policy or politics per se. They were there
Right.
for the show, I remember you saying. And,
Yeah.
and that made sense. And I'm wondering if America has kind of just shown up for a guy who's yelling about some stuff that they buy into. The immigrant thing is his big deal. He just, the mass deportation, et cetera. And otherwise, they're just around for the show to watch him smack talk the libs.
Yeah, well, that is it. I mean, it's seeing people taken to task who they don't like, right? And it's the owning the libs thing is a big part of this. There's no question about it. And the other side of that is when you have a concerted, effective, I mean, you'd have to say brilliant in a disturbing way, plan to discredit candidacy in 2015, coining something called fake news, which we'd never heard before. Fake news was the Inquirer and the Globe at the checkout counter at the grocery store. But to say that everything is fake news, what it does is it creates a populace that has nothing to believe anymore. So they seek out the things that they want to hear and believe those things. So he's done a disservice that sort of transcends presidential politics. It has created an unnatural and skepticism about the work that honest people do. And yeah, are there mistakes made? There are mistakes made in pediatricians' offices too. But the crux of it is that people are, now doubting everything they hear constantly, things that they hear from people who work very hard to get the story right.
That's, again, so interesting that it's so effective, as you suggested, to undermine first the media so that you now no longer need to own anything that instrument of information offers. So even as you say, good reporters and journalists work hard to try to corroborate every story. You have so undermined their credibility that you no longer need to own any of that
Right.
information. So, to the point, when Kelly steps up, I mean, this is a guy whose son died in Afghanistan. He's a military straight arrow, and he doesn't want to get into a political conversation at all. The military loathes these kinds of situations, and yet, when he steps up and makes these remarks about how incompetent and how uh, autocratic Trump is, uh, you you see it completely undermined by the fact that, well, he's a hack, and Trump just discounts everything
Right.
reported by media and repeated by media.
And his people and his followers in Congress and the people that adhere to him because they've gotten success from it, they have to second that. They echo what he's saying. Even if they don't privately, they have to echo it in order to keep their jobs because the people out in the field, the people that are voting for them, on Main Street, as it were, those people are buying it and they are doubting it because Trump is saying they're doubting it. So I was asking several people about the cats and dogs things after the debate, and I would say, the people in Springfield, Ohio, the officers, the chief of police, the town manager, they all say this didn't happen, that this is fiction, this didn't happen. Well, Trump also said, and I saw someone taking a goose out of a pond. All the people I said this to said, well, what about the geese? You know, and and so there isn't any search for the truth that happens. He is the truth according to them, and that's what they go on. So, this is not normal, right? I mean, this has not happened before in this way. Yeah, we all have, the ref is always against my team, right? There's a little bit of that, but there's never been somebody who gets off scot free who actually hasn't gotten off scot free, but yet still has, because he is none of the things have mattered that have affected him in courts or in Congress.
I'll address a couple of the comments in the chat here when we're done with Michael, or maybe if there's time. But I want to get quickly to something that I thought was significant, although I know endorsements may not carry. You've made this point before because we talk about celebrity endorsements. We talked about a
Yeah.
bunch of other endorsements with you, and you go, well, I don't know. Sometimes an endorsement matters. I think you mentioned that the Taylor Swift endorsement, because she was able to register so many new voters, might have been significant. But the newspaper endorsements, which used to really matter, I don't know that they do, because sadly newspapers, seem to be going away, and so interest in what's
Well,
happening in
they may have
newspapers.
accelerated their departure today, actually.
Well, and so to the LA Times. The LA Times
Yeah.
ran a complete and thorough recommendation and endorsement of a number of different propositions that face Californians, and there it was a discussion and again endorsements of congressional races, etc. But when it got to top of ticket, when it got to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, they completely laid out as a publication. The editorial staff did not endorse one or the other. Now, it should be quickly pointed out as well that the editorial staff did want to make an endorsement, but the owner of the paper bigfooted them and said, no, there'll be
Right.
no endorsement for top of ticket. Your thoughts?
Well, one of the ironies is when people like John Henry bought the Boston Globe, and Jeff Bezos the Washington Post, and Patrick Soon-Chung the LA Times, like, oh, great, we're free of corporate ownership. These are people who want to create save the newspaper industry, basically, and save these jobs and save these reporters. And now, as you're seeing, and I don't know the background of the Washington Post and how they got to that decision. They didn't endorse for many years, but the Times one was particularly upsetting because they had already had their endorsement, and as you said, they endorsed other things, and then Soon Chung pulled this endorsement. That to me is terrible. So the story is now endorsements, I don't think, matter as much in newspapers. They don't. But when this happens, when there's a circus outside the endorsement, then they matter, and then people start paying attention to it, and people get angry, and Trump now has a narrative to say, they don't want to endorse, the reporters, the fake news people wanted to endorse Harris, but the real people want to endorse me, and they couldn't do it, and so it's a bad situation, and it's going to be looked at that way, I believe, but I don't know what the remedy is. And it's also too new to really be able to digest it. It's happening. Is this our October surprise? It's a weak October surprise, but it is certainly surprising. And if they'd done this, if they had said 2 years ago or after the last election, we're no longer endorsing, okay, fair, but they didn't. And
on the October surprise thing, Michael, it just seems to me that there is we try to fit a bunch of different things into the October surprise box, and the reality is, I could say that his former chief of staff coming out and saying that Trump is wanted to use the military on Americans and on the streets of America, and the Milley revelations in Woodward's book, etc. These are all things that could fit into
any October. You're absolutely right. The October surprise is really a November surprise. If Trump loses, it's not a surprise, but that's the only thing that is going to affect this Donald Trump is losing. Nothing. He's proven at this point, 10 days before another election, that nothing affects me. But with that, Mark, I do have to go, I'm afraid.
We love you. Thank you. You can find Michael across the TYT network, and we will see.
And maybe we'll do
Michael,
this a little more in the lead up. We can talk about that, a couple of extra visits in the lead up to the election or something.
Yeah, definitely. We want to go. And on election night, are you on TYT, or what are you doing?
I'm going to be from 1 p.m. or 4 p.m. Eastern until 4 a.m. Eastern. Going to be on TYT covering this.
Cool. Well, we'll hope to get some word out of you during that time too. All right. See you, Michael.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.